So here's a look at the playoff picture right now. Chargers at 8-4, still leading that wild card conversation. You see the teams in the hunt. That includes the Bengals with their victory over the Ravens over the holiday weekend. And speaking of the Ravens, they do hold on for the moment that division lead in the AFC North at 6-6. Back here with Douzable, we welcome in Mackenzie Brooks from Inside the Lines via Sportsline. So it is a segment of in or out, given FanDuel odds, Sportsline projection models. So we're represented well here on this set. And some teams, naturally, we've talked about week to week. And we don't normally associate bubble teams with the NFL, but in a sense, that's kind of what this is, right? Teams that need to win or maybe need a little bit of help. Let's start with the Chargers. 8-4, which is great. They really benefited from an easy schedule last year, but as we just showed, Deuce, the schedule not so good down the stretch for them this year. Are you in or are you out on the Bolts making the playoffs?
Double T, I'm out. And it's crazy because Chargers fans were in my DM because me and Pete did a breakdown, I think 2 weeks ago, of the Chargers' remaining schedule, and I was like, there's a real possibility they could lose 5 straight to end out the season. And you talked about it, right? Games against the Eagles, who are fighting for their playoff lives, the Chiefs, the Texans, the Broncos, Cowboys, all these teams are fighting for their playoff lives. And when you look at the Chargers right now, the issues with the offensive line, the 2 offensive tackles, and now Justin Herbert has an injured hand who's going to have surgery on it. And I know he's one of the toughest quarterbacks in all of football, but you know that's going to affect them. I think they're going to lean on the run game a little bit more. I just think that's a gauntlet of a schedule, Mackenzie, and I honestly think they will lose all 5 and they'll be out of the playoffs.
That's crazy. I definitely a gauntlet of the schedule. They do have the hardest remaining schedule in our model as well, but we also think this is a good football team. I do think this is a good enough team. Do I think they go 5-0? No, but also do I see a couple non-conference games on the rest of that schedule? Yes. So as far as playoff contention, you win this game and they're up to 77% chance to make the playoff. They have such a good cushion right now. They're undefeated in their division, so the cushion they do have and the insurance they do have right now will help them not have to win out like some of these other desperate teams. But I will say, I'm a Philly fan. Philly looks broken, right? It might be a possible win there. And again, not a conference game. Cowboys aren't as well. So they only moved down to a 50% chance for us to make the playoff with the loss here, still alive. But I think the cushion they have in their division right now is really going to have to carry them.
My question would be, Mackenzie, we saw them 2 weeks ago versus Jacksonville. Is that the Chargers team we're accustomed to, or is it the one that just beat the Raiders, which everybody is beating the Raiders? And that's why I have concerns, because it's just like everybody gets right against the Raiders, right? That's what it seems to be this year. But then the next week, reality hits again, right? We saw that with the Cleveland Browns. Reality hit again. And now that you played a team like Jacksonville who's fighting for their playoff lives and they demolish you, like which team are we going to see going forward? I think that's my biggest concern with this team.
Okay. If you're with Dudes, you might want to sprinkle in to not make the playoffs for the Chargers and get a little bit of better payout than you would be laying it with the Bolts right now. To the aforementioned Chiefs, 6-6. Now, odds aren't always reflective, which is why we have the sports line data too, because they're such a public team, a very popular team, Ken, as you're laughing. Plus 106 on FanDuel to make the postseason. What does the number say? Right.
So plus 106 implies around 48% chance, right? We can call that 50 if we want. Like you just mentioned, that is, books taking advantage of an awesome brand. We would make it closer to 38% chance. If they lose this game, they go down to a 9% chance. Everything from there on out is not only must win, go 4-0, but you're also hoping for a Colts collapse, right? So now things aren't even in your control. If you do win this game, you're sneaking up to that coin flip, and it's great because you are in control of your own driver's seat, just winning your games and winning out. But if you lose this game, that becomes a problem of you're also hoping for the Colts to collapse, because that's quite frankly the only great head-to-head you have right now, right? When you're in the Chiefs situation, you're worried about who in the wild card race do you have head-to-heads against. And they don't have many.
No.
They really don't have many not to root for here. So I'd call it a win-out, must-win season. It's not technically dead if they lose this week, but now you're asking for things to happen not in your control.
And, Kent, I'm so glad you brought that up, because when you look at the tiebreaker scenarios, you said it, they would have to literally hope the Colts fall off the face of the earth, because they don't own the tiebreaker versus Jacksonville. They don't own it versus the Bills, all these other teams that are vying for playoff spots. Honestly, when you look at these next 2 games, I think they have to win both of them to even have a chance to get in. And the Texans game, more than anything, because of the tiebreaker scenario, if you lose to the Texans, literally the Colts are the only team you have a one-up on, because you've already lost to the Denver Broncos. You've already lost to the Chargers. So there's probably an outside chance they don't have a chance to win the division. But when you're just talking about teams you're jockeying for and to get into the playoffs, the Chiefs have really hurt themselves by losing against some of these teams that are vying for those last couple of playoff spots. I actually have them out. And I said this 2 weeks ago, just because everybody was talking about their schedule eases up, and I'm like, what schedule are you looking at? I'm like, the Texans need to get into the playoffs. The Broncos are fighting for the #1 seed. The Chargers are fighting for their playoff lives. Like, this isn't an easy schedule by any means. And they ended up losing to the Cowboys like I said they would. So I don't think the Chiefs get in. I know it's rare to say that about Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, but just the way that they've kind of faltered and put themselves behind the 8 ball, I don't think they're getting in this year.
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing if you beat Houston is just taking them out of that wild card competition, hypothetically, but again, still hoping for other things to go your way. The difference between the AFC and the NFC is the wild card race. For the AFC, you really need 10 wins. NFC, I'd argue 11.
11, yeah.
What this win would do for you is get you closer to 11 wins to put you atop of that mountain. But still, the minute you tell me you need things out of your control to go your way, I do not want to have a ticket on you to make the playoff.
Right. Not very good in terms of going into it process-wise. But if we continue the Douz game theory right now, that both the Chargers are out and the Chiefs are out, that means by default you not only have the Broncos making the postseason out of the AFC West, which would be good news for the Texans in the South, because then they don't, I mean, they're still in the division with the Colts and the Jags, but there would be a path to a wild card here. So as we take a look at the playoff picture, Texans all of a sudden hot. They got C.J. Stroud back. They beat the Colts, now 7-5. FanDuel has -134 to make the postseason. Make in or out for the Texans?
You stated it, Tommy. Since I have the other two out, I have the Texans in, and this team is on a different trajectory right now. They're playing the best football of the season so far right now. C.J. Stroud comes back after missing nearly a month of football. Took him a little bit to get going, but he really got it together that second half, attacking the middle of the field versus the Indianapolis Colts. And you know me, Tommy, I'm going to always lean on a championship-type defense. If you have that type defense, you have a chance to get into the playoffs. I honestly think they pull off the upset this week in Kansas City. I know that's going to be the main game this week that everybody's looking at, but the way that C.J. Stroud and that offensive line is starting to finally gel together, I think as far as complementary football, this is the best they've played all year long. I like the Texans to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that line implies around a 57% chance. We have it around 59, and I think it's worth taking it. And this is a team that's always been in our top 13 power rankings because of that defense. We've always been able to say this is a top 3 defense, and I said this a few weeks ago of just C.J. Stroud, be like an 18th best offense.
Correct.
Like just be a mid-offense and let the defense do the work, which they're finally finding the potential and the stride to do here. So I do think it is worth that price. The other nice thing about them is that they're still in the division dance while being in the wild card dance as well. Not all of these teams have that type of luxury, and they're also in a division that helps them where you have Tennessee, where everyone's going to go 2-0 against them, and that just helps your conference record in general. Again, another thing not everybody has a luxury of having here. So a few things going their way as far as their division, as far as their conference in general here, but I do think in general the actual X's and O's of the football team, that defense can carry them really far.
You know, we talked a lot about what Mac Jones did to San Francisco during Brock Purdy's absence. Hopefully we still talk about what Davis Mills did in absence of C.J. Stroud.
That was massive.
3-0 without C.J. Stroud. Davis Mills coming in with that defense to help along with that win streak. Let's get to the Cowboys, which last time I heard, they had beaten the Super Bowl representatives twice in 4 days. Don't know if anybody actually heard that. Unfortunately, it only still counts for 2 wins. 6-5-1, though. So the odds are stacked against the Cowboys, Douz. But are you buying the momentum that they're doing right now, in or out on the Cowboys?
Me and Mackenzie have been higher on the Cowboys than a lot of people. I'm even higher on them than the sports line model. And when you look at it, I remember, Kenz, when we did this, I think 3 weeks ago, I said, if they win 2 out of these next 3, they'll get in. But to your point, it might take 11 wins in the NFC. The issue for the Cowboys are the people that they're chasing, they continue to win too. That's the biggest issue. But if they win this game versus the Lions, the Cowboys are getting in. I'm going to say they're going to get in. Right now, the Lions are having issues on the offensive side of the ball. When you talk about the offensive line, they've been giving up a lot of points lately on the defensive side. They've been dealing with injuries in the secondary. I think the Cowboys, with their balance of the offense, we know it's one of the most potent offenses in football. The defense is starting to come together, right? Quentin Williams and that defensive front starting to finally get after the quarterback. Those linebackers, DeMarion Overshown, he is one of the most athletic linebackers in football, and he's a guy that can match up with backs and tight ends out of the backfield. I think the Cowboys get in now. They play a game at the Lions, which essentially could be a winner get in, loser get out. I think the Cowboys go ahead and take care of business. And again, I don't know if there's a tougher 3-game stretch that they've played than anybody has in the NFL, but the way that their trajectory is showing right now and how they've played, I have the Cowboys getting in.
I hate to bet on teams that are in win to stay alive territory, right? That's a really tough place to be. We're pretty much in line with the odds makers here, around a 25% chance to make the playoff, as in a 25% chance to win out here. Now that moves to 41% chance if you win this game, drops to 9% chance if you lose, essentially calling it playoff elimination. This is a team with a lot of wins, a lot of empty wins. A lot of these wins on their resume don't really mean much. 2 claps for beating Kansas City, but that's not even a conference game. I'd say Philly is really the only one that head-to-heads down the road could help them, but you're beating the Giants and you're beating the Jets, and there's only so many wins that are really helping them. They're still plus 650 to win the division. The Eagles are still minus 900. So as you mentioned, it's that wild card dance. What I will say about this team, glass half full, is having that tie, being 11-6-1, or excuse me, 11-5-1 instead of being 11-6. The way the parity of this conference has been, that could be very big for them down the stretch. And who would ever thought a tie is, I mean, it is better than a loss, but who thought it would mean anything?
To that point, Kens, that Arizona game is probably going to keep them up at night, because that's a game at home they probably should have won. And then even if you go to the Chicago Bears game, like that game they probably had a chance to win and they didn't. And those are 2 divisional games on the NFC side, which would have helped them in their cause. But I just think the way that they're playing right now, they're probably one of the hottest teams in the NFL. I could see them winning out and getting in.
Defense much improved, especially at the deadline. The question then becomes, was it a little bit too little, too late? So here's a look. Speaking of that game, of course, Cowboys and Lions, which is important. Playoff chances by Week 14 result. Again, with a win and with a loss. We now can segue to Detroit, which was the top seed last year, decimated by injuries, were the darlings, and all of a sudden finding themselves in the hunt right now, trying to fight for the wild card.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for them. I'm going to call them out. I think this is a really hard spot to be. I mean, they're 2 games back from 2.5 from San Francisco. They'll just never catch a lot of these teams in the conference win percentage. And you're looking at an 8-2 team at San Francisco. Like, you talk about the teams ahead of them. Not only are they in a hole literally with their record, they're in a hole with injuries as well. I think what their situation is, they are the biggest Packers fans now, right? You need Chicago to have a complete meltdown. The same way we were talking about the Chiefs need a Colts meltdown. This is a team that needs Chicago to melt down, because that's all they have. That's all they have to their name right now in the head-to-head situation. So you need to see the Packers sweep them, and that's the only way that they're going to find themselves in this conversation. But they're in win-or-go-home territory as well right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have them out, and I picked this team to win the NFC North. Too many injuries at the worst possible time. We talked about the offensive line being banged up, but then you lose Amon-Ra St. Brown for probably a couple games. And we saw how that kind of derailed the offense. He's that guy that Jared Goff really confines in and trusts, especially on the money down on 3rd down, and they didn't have him. Now, Jameson Williams stepped up, but can you go toe-to-toe with the Cowboys offense without having Amon-Ra St. Brown, especially with the injuries to the secondary, how the defense has kind of been lackluster the last couple of weeks? I have them out because you also look at it, even with the Cowboys game, they have at the Rams and at the Bears. And there's always been this storyline with Jared Goff. Can he play in inclement weather? Now, again, a few years ago, he went to Green Bay and knocked them out of the playoffs. But again, they didn't get into the playoffs that year. Now, like you said, they have to essentially win out or be close to winning out to get into the playoffs. Even if they go 10-7, I don't know if that's good enough to get them into the playoffs.
This might be an 11-win wild card situation in the NFC, but you were talking about going down the stretch here. We're basically a 50-50 versus Dallas, a 50-50 versus the Rams, and then, by the way, also in Chicago at the end of the year. From what I know, it's not a very pleasant place to play, Tommy.
No, not at all.
Not weather-wise.
Could be a factor in that one, just going out on a limb. Ken's, Douz, appreciate you talking about these teams, whether they're in or they're out. Inside the lines on Sportsline. Projections, prices, it is a sweet spot right now. We've got NFL, college football, of course, college basketball also in the mix. Scan that QR code or check them out at cbssports.com/ITL.